Hello, everyone. My name is Hady Raphael, and today on the show, NYCFC puts a stop to CF Montreal home winning streak. The Canadian national team barely able to get a point versus Guatemala, and the transfer window opens up on July 5th. That and a lot more on episode 138 of The Ball is Round. And I'm joined today by my good friend Elias Gregoriadis. How are you, Elias, today?
I'm doing all right, Hattie. I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
You should teach me how to be all right after such a lousy weekend
Yeah,
on the soccer front. I
week
don't
in
know how to
general,
be
honestly,
okay. I just
it's
don't
a
know how to
lousy
be
week
okay
in
after
general.
this.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Oh,
exactly.
it's
Very
it's
lousy
it's
week.
it's being a CF Montreal fan and a Habs fan and a Canadian national team fan. It's you've become accustomed to weeks like this where just nothing goes right. Yes, CF Montreal have had success, but you become used to weeks where you can't get anything going in soccer wise.
I know, but like
Yeah.
we've had a decent run without any big upsets. With the Canadian national team, with Montreal last year, and we got used to it in a way. No,
Yeah, I think we were kind of maybe spoiled a bit. we I think we because even this season with the really bad start, there was context, and now that everyone is healthy and there's games at home, Montreal all of a sudden is putting up points. So I think they needed. I think maybe the fans needed to be humbled a little bit. I think everyone surrounding the club needed to be humbled and reminded that this team is decent, but they're not necessarily world beaters yet. And Canada wise, well, I mean, Canada wise, yeah, Canada wise, a lot to talk about. But Montreal, I think Montreal, media and fans alike needed to be maybe brought down a peg and reminded that there's still work to be done with this group.
let's dive right into it, Elias, because there's a lot to say today. So first of all, we'll say hi to Eve. She's not here today. Unfortunately, she has other things to do, and you know what? We are here every week, so sometimes we do have a personal life to attend to. Today is one of those days for Eve Powell, but she'll be back, of course, next week for the next episode of The Ball is Round. So let's dive right into it. We'll start with CF Montreal first, because we are a Montreal podcast at first. And then, of course, we'll talk about the Canadian national team, the men's national team. For the women's, we're going to wait next week until we start with the preview of the World Cup and so and so. So,
Can't wait.
um, now, CF Montreal lost its first game at home since April 15th this Saturday, when the club's pet peeve, New York City FC, visited Stade Saputo. So 1-0 loss, where the visitors scored one lone goal at Stade Saputo. And even on April 15th, last time Montreal lost at home, it was also a 1-0 loss.
Yeah.
It's very hard to score at Stade Saputo, right, Elias?
Yeah, I mean, look, the two goals are very unique, right? The goal, the goal DC United scored was kind of immediately off kickoff, maybe caught Montreal sleeping, and obviously the scissor kick for Pellegrini was incredible. And the two goals are not very common goals; you don't see them every day. So I think that's why they kind of stick out. Because they're the only two goals, like you said, scored at Saputo. So I think that Montreal has made that place, regardless of this result, it's still a fortress, and I think that they still, they play incredibly well. They play far above what is expected of them at home. If you look at what the expectation
Yeah,
was, I don't think anybody expected them to be 6 games unbeaten with
true,
clean sheets,
true.
road form notwithstanding. They do
Like
obviously
most of
play
the teams in
so much
MLS.
better at home.
Yeah.
Exactly, but I think Montreal kind of epitomizes just how tough it is, how much better teams play at home than on the road. Because again, they are like now they're third best at home, and they're like second worst on the road. So I think they
Yeah.
kind of maybe represent the extreme of that idea, but it is a very MLS concept.
And it's a game of opposites for Montreal this year. It seems like it's like you said. Now, Hernan Lozada this time around, we talked about the schedule and how hectic was the schedule of CF Montreal. But this time
Mhm.
around, Hernan Lozada had a lot of time to prepare for this game. And you know what? He can't say, we had a game not 3 days ago or something like that. He had a whole week to prepare for this game. And this is the starting 11 that he chose for this week for the game against New York City FC. With Jonathan Sirois in goal, Joel Waterman as a right center back, Rudy Camacho in the middle, Gabriele Corbo on the left. As wing backs, we had Sean Rea as a right wing back, Ariel Lassiter as a left wing back. In the middle, we had Victor Wanyama and Nathan Saliba. As a number 10, Bryce Duke. And up front, Sunusi Ibrahim, Mason Toy. On the bench, you had Pentemis, Jabang, Torkelson, Campbell, Hamdi, Miljevic, Vilsa, Quizera, and Ofor. What did you think about the starting 11, Elias,
Um,
when you saw it the first time?
Given that they were expecting to have a lot of the ball, I wasn't too surprised to see Sean Rea at that right wing spot. I do genuinely think it's going to be either him or a mix of George Campbell and Joel Waterman, depending on the type of team they're going to play against. So Sean Rea there wasn't too much as a first surprise. Everyone else has been in good form. So the starting 11 in general was nothing too far out of left field. And again, the only point of contention, as everyone knows, is going to be that right wing back spot until Metzer Schweinsteiger or Lassie Laplani get healthy, or ZBG and or Aaron Herrera come back from international duty. So until then, we could see some more Sean Rea, whether he likes it or not, or maybe George Campbell and or Joel Waterman there. So I wasn't too surprised at all.
I think we could have seen Georgia Cruzera, play that role, or maybe Lassiter again as a right wing back, even if it wasn't really successful last time. I really wanted to see Cruzera on the right hand side because Lassiter is the left wing back right now with
Hmm.
Lapalainen not being here. So why not try Quizera if you're gonna try Sean Rea? Why not Quizera? At least he's used to play on the wing. So even
Yeah,
if it's the opposite wing, it's still better than having a central player playing that role like Sean Rea. Even if it was very good the first time around when he played in the Canadian Championship, but it was the Canadian Championship. It's not an
and it's
MLS.
against
It's not
Vaughn too.
against
It's not. Yeah.
exactly. It was against Vaughan. It's not against an MLS team. Yes, that had a lot of trouble on the road, but that has still a lot of very capable individual players, individual quality with the so much very good players with the Keaton Parks, with Talas Magno, with Santi
Yeah.
Rodriguez, and there's so many good players on that team. So I don't know. I wasn't really happy about the starting 11. Now it's easy for me to say after the game,
In
of
hindsight,
course,
yeah.
but yeah, I wasn't very very pleased, but I wasn't really upset either. So, but you know what? Montreal didn't start the game very well, unfortunately. New York City FC uh, came out guns blazing, like right away,
Mhm.
with having the first shot on target with Santiago Rodriguez trying the shot from outside the area directly into Serrois' hands. Um, and it felt, and a few minutes later, again, Stalis Magno having that great opportunity after a quick play down the left with Santi Rodriguez, but the Brazilian wasn't able to put it on target. It felt like New York City FC had a game plan from the get go, and things were very clear in their head. And Nick Cushing had a very made out plan against Hernan Lozada. Did you feel the same thing as me? It felt like very, very clear gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, especially on the road, if there's a ground do very well at historically, you're going to go in with that much more confidence. Even if you're not doing well on the road, even if you haven't won in your last 12 games in all competitions, if you know that they've only lost to Montreal twice in the entire history of these two teams playing each other, then you go in with a certain amount of confidence. You go, okay, this is a game that we could look at to, even if it's on the road, to maybe snatch some points and build some momentum. So I think that they came into this game with a lot of energy, and rightfully so, because I think that's how a lot of teams are approaching playing on the road nowadays. Is you kind of throw everything forward in the first few minutes, maybe try and find a quick goal, or maybe try and build some momentum, and then you kind of try and manage the game in the second half, or as the game progresses. But I was not at all surprised to see New York come out with that energy, given the fact that, I'm sure that even though, and I know Sada and a lot of those starters didn't experience it, there people still remember how they walked into Montreal last year and basically just won the game with one hand tied behind their back, right? So I think that those two things do weigh a lot, and maybe Montreal underestimated New York a bit. It did look like it at the start of the game because they were flat-footed, which is something that you almost never see at Stade Saputo.
Yeah, like you said, they were really flat-footed in the beginning of the game, and even in the first half altogether. And we'll talk about the first half,
Yeah,
in the next few minutes. 10 minutes later, right after that that opportunity from Talis Magno, again Magno, he recuperated the ball in the midfield. Um, and then he played the ball with his teammate against Santi Rodriguez. That link up between Santi Rodriguez and Talas Magno was working beautifully against
yeah,
CF
yeah.
Montreal during that game. And again, it was an easy stuff for Sierra, but every time Talas Magno was, it seemed like CF Montreal um, didn't have it in them to counter Thales Magno, because every time there was a clear opportunity, it was the Brazilian at the end of the opportunity
Hmm.
having that great chance in front of goal. And I think that if you look at the highlights, and if you should look at the first half in general, if CF Montreal was 3-0 down after the first half, nobody would have been surprised. That's how much New York City
Hmm.
FC was better than CF Montreal in that first half.
Yeah, I mean, I think that New York was definitely the better team. I think they'd have to be very opportunistic to make it three. But again, if it was more than 1-0, I don't think. I think you're right. I don't think anyone would have been surprised. And Talis Magno, who is one of the best proper wingers in MLS, who's always tricky and who's always so tough to play one on one. He played basically one on one against Joel Waterman the entire game because Sean Rea is not a defender, right? And Alosada said it after the game. That's not his position. So that's kind of another reason why I was a bit surprised. That the only bit of contention was that right wing back spot. And again, I understand why they chose to have Sean Rea there. But when you know that a lot of their counterattack comes through that creativity and that the quality of Talis Magno's dribbling, then maybe you want to give Joel Waterman a little bit more help, or maybe you want to give that right side center back a bit more help. And that's why having a center back who is maybe not as mobile as Sean Rea, but definitely more adept defensively, give him a chance, right? Because we talked about this. Joel Waterman is not the fastest player and who's not exactly going to run up and down the flank, but he is still very good, and his crosses are still very, and his delivery is very strong, and he has much more defensive comfort, and he has this rapport with the back line that Sean Rea just doesn't have. So yeah, Talis Magno was basically 1-on-1 the entire game, and as good as Joe Waterman is, that's a nightmare assignment for any defender. So
Yeah,
I'm
and
not at all surprised that he was feasting all the entire first half.
yeah, exactly. And Joel Waterman didn't have only Talis Magno. He had Santi Rodriguez also that was
Yeah,
playing
who's
most of the
shifting
time
over? Yeah, a lot.
and
Yeah,
shifting over on the left, on the left hand side, so the right hand side of the Montreal defense, but on the left for New York City FC. And at the 33rd minute, that's when New York City FC was was able to find the back of the net. With Kufre, another very good wing back, he had a wonderful game Saturday, sorry. He played a 1-2 with Santi Rodriguez on the right, crossing the ball, very nice cross, to find Matias Pellegrini, who tried what we called a papinade. You called it a scissors, but I call it a papinade because this is how
Everyone's
it's
got their
called.
own way of, yeah, everyone
Uh,
has their own way of
Papinade is the term because of Jean-Pierre Papin, who was one of the
oh,
first, if not the first, to try that shot, which is a scissor, but like a side scissor in a certain way, because it's not completely from the back; it's just from the side. So it's Jean-Pierre Papin that really tried this, and he was so good at this. But yeah, so he tried
okay.
this scissors with a sidekick on the volley, and the Argentine gave the Americans the lead. That was a well-deserved 1-0 lead for New York City FC, right, Elias?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at that point, Montreal hadn't done too much to make New York sweat defensively. Didn't ask nearly enough questions, and New York was the one generating all the offense. So yeah, absolutely, this is deserved, not just for a road team, but for in any context. New York should have seen themselves going into halftime 1-0 up, at least 1-0 up.
I looked for any kind of opportunity for CF Montreal before that goal to try to bring some positivity to this pod. Unfortunately, there wasn't any. I think the first chance, if you want to call it a half chance, if you want to call it for CF Montreal, was at the 38th minute with Sean Rea trying a very long range shot that went wide. It was the first real attempt on goal from the home team, and it wasn't really a clear cut chance. So not only they weren't able to withstand the offensive threat of New York City FC, but they weren't even able to create anything offensively. And when you put someone like
Yeah.
Sean Rea as a right wing back, it's to create offensive threats, and they weren't able to do that. Why is that? Is it because New York City FC defense was really strong, or did you think that CF Montreal team lacked creativity?
I think it's a bit of both, right? And Montreal has done. If you watch every game where they do well at home, except for maybe the Minnesota game, because I do feel like that's an outlier and kind of an exception. But Montreal gets their results because they continuously batter on the door of the defense, and their very high press does really well in forcing teams back and kind of into submission. And the two times that hasn't happened was against DC and it was against New York. And the biggest reason, and that's kind of why I saw not just the similarity of the goal, but the similarity of the entire game for me was the fact that much like DC, New York did not let Montreal play into the midfield. So like if you watch the Nashville game, for example, with their 5-4-1, they basically sat back and it turned into like almost six defenders at one point for large parts of the game. And they would just kind of chuck the ball back upfield and then reset their defense and then let Wanyama or let any of the midfielders kind of get the ball turn and then set a play and then only worry about the forwards. What DC did very well, what New York did very well was they made playing the ball from the defense into the midfield very difficult, right? So whether it was Bryce Duke, whether it was Wanyama, whether it was Nathan Saliba getting the ball and turning, it was nightmare for them because they always had one or two people on them. So that's what New York did very well. And it was very similar to DC. And I wouldn't be surprised if they identified the DC performance as a staple for, okay, this is how we're going to defend because every other team that comes into Montreal and tries to sit in a low block kind of gets just pounded into submission because every single time Montreal gets the ball, they get the ball, they don't reset and then they calm down. No, they get the ball, they're looking to break through lines again immediately. And if you stop the first line break, then they kind of have to stop and slow down. And then once Montreal gets slowed down, inertia kind of sets in, and then they kind of get a little bit lethargic or flat footed, which is why they found so much success. So I was watching that, and it really did remind me of the DC game because of the fact that they played very similarly. If you go back and watch the DC game, that's how Wayne Rooney lined up his team. And he talked about how stopping the first pass into the midfield is the most crucial part of kind of slowing down Montreal because once you force them to play the long game, then they kind of fall back into their little shell and they lose their momentum, and it's almost impossible for that momentum to kick back up again. So that was really impressive from New York because they basically put that into like cruise control.
I really love that. And you know what? I think that you got it spot on. That's exactly what happened. When you block the midfield for CF Montreal, they're helpless. And there's quite a few reasons because of that. There's quite a few reasons that explain that. First of all, you don't have any real wingbacks, and not having any real wingbacks right now doesn't help. The crossing ability, you need to have that crossing ability to create those chances in the box. And 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 that's very important when you're playing with two strikers up front, because the strikers are not going to go on the wing to help those wingers. Those wingbacks, sorry, those wingbacks will have to cross the ball the right way for those strikers to put the ball in the back of the net, and we don't have those wingbacks that are able to have quality crosses in the box. So I have a question for you, and that's I completely agree with you. There's another thing also that I wanted to
Mhm.
add. um, there's one similarity also between those two games, the game against DC United and the game against New York City FC, where Montreal lost twice at home. I wasn't there. No, I'm joking, but it's really I wasn't there both times.
It's not a coincidence.
No, but to be more serious, what did you think Hernando Sada could have done in order to change things around? Don't you think that at halftime, adding a midfielder would have helped that CF Montreal team? And not adding a midfielder, uh, I think that just changing the format, changing the formation,
Hmm.
playing with one striker, and just adding an extra offensive midfielder in the midst would have been the best chance for CF Montreal to play
Yeah.
against New York City FC. Either Miljevic or Hamdi, whoever is the best between the two for this type
Yeah.
of game. And for me, it was Hamdi. What do you think about that? Was that for you the first thing that came out of that came in your head when you saw the game plan of New York City FC?
Yeah, I mean, I get because again, I really did feel like a lot of deja vu when I was watching DC, and the first time that Montreal got any momentum against DC United was when they changed to a 4-3-3. So they brought in two attacking midfielders to play, right behind the striker, and then they had Sunusi and Lassiter play as the wingers.
Yeah,
So they kind of shifted the entire formation into that, and I think that maybe not that exact formation, but the only change being a like for like sub for Joel Waterman and George Campbell as the only adjustment you make was not enough, right? And you kind of saw that
yeah,
for the next 15 minutes before they made their triple substitution or their double substitution. Sorry, you
yeah,
kind of saw that, and I think he recognized that another 15 minutes of that could have maybe bore fruit, but the 50 minutes after the first half, of the second half, were essentially the same. It was an extension of the first half. So I just don't think he did enough. I think maybe he was waiting to pull the trigger on it, but Losada's been very good with his halftime adjustments, right? Except for one or two games where it hasn't worked out. The rest of the time, he's managed to sway the game when he makes these big adjustments, right? And it's a big swing. So I think that you have to trust your gut as a coach, and you have to, if these were the subs he wanted to do, if he wanted to bring in Visay and 04 and he wanted to switch to a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1,
you
however
should
he
have
wanted
done
to,
that.
play it, go for it, right?
Yeah,
What's the worst that could happen? You're already losing. And this has been proven. These changes, he has this proof of concept that his changes impact the game. So
yeah, and
trust yourself.
yeah, I mean, he could have changed things up like gradually by just entering,
Mhm.
like I said, just an extra attacking midfielder for one striker,
Mhm.
and
Exactly.
then if no equalizer by the 60th minute or 65th minute, and then you add that extra winger or player that can play on the wing to play that 4-3-3. You just substitute a central defender. But we'll talk about the substitution a bit later, because that was just before halftime. A very, very, very important opportunity for New York City FC with Talis Magno
Yeah.
founding Kufre, who sent the ball to Rodriguez, that gave it back to Matalas Magno. Jonathan Sirois stood tall, answered and parried that shot on the return. First of all, Rodriguez, and after it, Lenich tried again, but the Quebecer again made two very important saves. What a great sequence of play from Jonathan Sirois. And when you look at Jonathan Sirois performing that well, you cannot, you cannot you cannot stop to think at how John Herdman didn't choose the Quebecer
Yeah.
in the Gold Cup. I just can't. I can't understand it. So,
Yeah,
what do you think about this sequence of play for Jonathan Sirois?
it kind of reminded, because in the press box, Simon Salvant, who works for the French side of the Canadian press, kind of said it
Yeah,
against. I want to think it was against Nashville or Minnesota, but he said that there was this kind of force field around the Montreal net when they play at home, where the
yeah,
ball just does not feel like going in. It just does not go in. Whether that's Jonathan Sirois, whether that's the defenders in front of him blocking shots, whether that's anything, the ball just does not want to go in. Whether it's the
yeah,
forwards missing their chances, there's this like voodoo that work, that just magic, right? And it takes an incredible goal to kind of break that force field. But that was, again, we looked at each other and like we knew right away, it's like there's something magical there's some kind of spell that they've cast or something, because when the ball doesn't want to go in and you have this confidence that you know that the ball's not going to go in, then you play the way that sequence happened, because it was an utterly ridiculous sequence. The entire like 30 seconds of it was just nonsense, and it worked.
yeah,
So I mean,
yeah,
at that point, if it works, it works.
yeah, exactly. And you know when you have a goalkeeper that has that much confidence,
Yeah,
it lifts the spirits of your whole team.
exactly.
And the reason why CF Montreal was able to go on that run at home was mainly because of Jonathan Sirois and how
Mhm.
confident he is, and he gives that confidence to his whole back line. And he was so good. He kept Montreal in the game time and time
Again,
and time again during 90 plus minutes. This guy is the next real thing. He is the next real thing. He's
yeah,
doing
absolutely,
everything we
absolutely,
want to see from a young
yeah.
goalkeeper, and hopefully someone
And
else will
George
see
Campbell
it
kind of
at
said
one
it.
point.
Yeah, yeah. George Campbell kind of said it at the end after the game, that you don't. He said that you always say that we never play differently with depending on who we're playing with, but when you have someone like Jean Wynets who's in all this confidence, you defend differently. You're willing to make concessions and worry about other things because you know that the goalie behind you is good for it, right? So you don't have to worry about. I have to worry about the pass, but also I can't let him shoot, because if he shoots, I don't know if the ball's gonna go in. So you play differently, and you play with this like almost this freedom, right? And sometimes that's what we've seen a lot of Montreal, where they're willing to take risks with the ball and they're willing to take risks while defending, because they know that Chantal Sirois is good for it, and he has been since he took over, and especially at home.
Yeah, and Roberto has a very nice take. Yep, but he can't score goals, unfortunately.
That's the
Yeah,
only
you're
problem with
right,
Chantal
Roberto.
Sirois.
You are right, Roberto, and we are aware of that. But at the end of the day, I think that there's a way for there's a way for your coach to put more bodies up front and to
Mhm.
create something else, and that's what he failed to do during the halftime. We talked quite a few times here on the ball is round how Hernan Losada has been awesome with his substitutions. This time around, for me, he missed his chance. I think he could have done a lot better. First of all, singling out Joel Waterman by just
Mhm.
removing him and entering George Campbell, for me, is the wrong message to send. I don't think that Joel Waterman had could be singled out in that
No.
first half because the whole team was completely overrun, like completely overrun and dominated. And singling out Joel Waterman, putting Campbell didn't do anything more to the team. I didn't see a difference, and I didn't understand why that substitution was made. Did you understand it, Elias?
No, we wanted to ask Lusada about that at the end of the game, but the press conference ended relatively abruptly. But
Oh,
um,
okay, that's interesting. I wasn't there, so you have to tell me about it.
it ended after like 5 minutes, right? So it was a short press conference. It happens
Oh
sometimes,
wow.
especially when you lose. You're not in a very talkative mood. It happens, but it was weird because it did. I thought that if anything, George Campbell was going to come on, and then one of the two of them was going to replace Sean Rea on the flank as that right back. But no, Sean Rea stayed on, and I think he eventually had to concede that I had to take Rea off when 04 and Sank came on. But
We'll
at
talk about that
halftime,
later.
that being yeah,
At
we'll talk about that
halftime.
later. But at halftime, that being the only substitution felt, assuming that there's no injury or knock concern with Joel Waterman, very, very strange substitution. That doesn't make
Yeah,
any kind of sense.
yeah. I would have thought that maybe you would remove, the central defender and put a midfielder, or
Yeah.
put a striker, put a winger. That could have been something ballsy to do against New York City FC, knowing that they scored, and we already knew that New York City FC was going to park the bus, and that's exactly what they did in the second half.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the second half. They really tried to create something new, CF Montreal. They tried to equalize with Sunusi Ibrahim at the 50th minute, I think. Sunusi Ibrahim controlled the ball very like beautifully in the middle of the pitch, withstanding the pressure of the New York City FC midfielder, and then sending Mason Toy through. Now the American striker really tried. We cannot really blame him because he really tried to get on the ball. The pass was really good, but what was really good is the defending of the New York City FC defense, with
Yeah.
Kufre making a very important sliding challenge to really bother Mason Toy, but also Justin Hack really closing out the door so that the shot was in a very simple angle for the goalkeeper, for the New York City EFC goalkeeper. But that was the first real chance for CF Montreal around the 50th minute, and it came from a very, how can we say, I'm trying to find the right adjective, but a very underwhelming Sunusi Ibrahim during that game. Even with
Yeah.
a very subpar performance, he was able to create something, and that's what you want from your agonizing strikers. You want them
Yeah.
to try something, and he did try something, and I was okay with this. What did you think about that sequence of play?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like what you said, right? It's good to have a striker that, even when they're not having the best game, can at least make one or two things happen for the people around him. But again, that sequence was the first time that Montreal had time to get the ball and orchestrate some kind of play in the midfield. It was the one time that they found a gap, and the one time that they were able to exploit it. So it's not a coincidence that New York kind of shut that gap immediately after that chance happened, because they recognized that that's where Montreal got the ball that last time, and they corrected their mistake very well. But what that did was it was finally a sign of life. Like, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw that. Oh my God, it took us an hour to see something, but
Yeah.
there's finally there was this intention to get forward and to cause problems and to ask questions. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame that that wasn't done more consistently or earlier, but c'est la volonté. It was the desire to get forward and give them a headache, and that which just wasn't present in the first half.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Now, of course, around the 55th minute, Sancho Rodriguez scored a goal that was called offside by maybe a hair. It was
Yeah.
very, very close, but that was beautifully played by University FC.
Mhm.
I don't think you can always find the reason, like a defender's mistake to explain the goal, but sometimes it's just beautifully played, and this was one
Yeah.
of those. And that's when our friend Hernando Sada made those changes at the 71st minute. I think 20 minutes too late, or 25 minutes too late, in my opinion, with Chinonso Ofor and Jules-Anthony Vilsaint coming in for Sean Rea and Mason Toy.
Mhm.
Now, the 20-year-old Quebecer made himself known with a beautiful shot from outside the box at the 75th minute. That was saved by Baraza. By the way, Baraza is the upgrade of Breza. No, I'm joking. And 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 again, we saw Jules-Anthony Vilsaint really trying a lot of things and keeping things simple. And at one time, you have to keep things simple when things are not really working. Just
Mhm.
get the ball and just create a shooting lane and just shoot the ball. And that's what he did at the 90th minute, shooting the ball again, and it was saved like easily by Barraza. Um, of course, during that game, we'll talk about Jules-Anthony Vilsaint in a few minutes because I don't want to stay too much on the game because the play-by-play is not really interesting. At the 94th minute, Sirois made another save in the dying moments of the game with Richard Ledesma getting the ball and trying to score the second goal. Sirois was there. How important was the impact of Jules-Anthony Vilsaint on that game, even if he didn't score? Do you
Yeah.
think that's a breath of fresh air from the Quebecer?
Yeah, I just think it was someone that hasn't had too many was with the first team that was really hungry to prove himself, right? And I think that he was like, if I get the ball anywhere near the penalty area with somebody not directly in front of me, I'm shooting the ball. And it's that kind of directness that we didn't see at all from the team in that game. And it's this kind of directness that we don't normally see from the team in general, just because of the approach from the strikers that was, yeah, refreshing is the right word for that. It was a breath of fresh air. And I think that he's somebody that can bring a different perspective, because even if he has a similar profile to Chinonso 4 and Mason Toy, he's 6'3", 6'4". He's a very big kid. He
Yeah,
does like to play with the ball at his feet. He does like to dribble. He does like to take people on 1v1, which is something Montreal wasn't doing, right? There was no willingness
yeah,
to do anything. We talked about the chance from Mason Toy where there was finally like a willingness to attack the back line. And up until the point where Vilsaint came on, that had gone away again. So Vilsaint came on, it was kind of like, I'm going to take somebody on. Even if I lose the ball, I'm going to try and dribble by somebody. I'm going to try and play through the back line, and I'm going to try and create chances. And yeah, that obviously gave like a little mini spur momentum. You got the crowd back into it too, most importantly. Ultimately, nothing ended up working out, but it was definitely as good a cameo as you could hope for someone like him.
yeah, and that's what you want from your young players. You want them to
Exactly.
inject
Exactly. Yeah.
that that liveliness or
Exactly.
on the pitch, if I can say, or you need them to
Yeah.
to
It
to
reminded
in,
me of Quizarra coming on, last year, where he just came in, he gave
exactly.
everybody a shot in the arm, and it was the
Exactly, and that's exactly what we needed to see from Jules-Anthony Vilsaint. Uh, Now, unfortunately, it's a loss for CF Montreal, a 1-0 loss at home. What's really nice about the MLS is that one loss doesn't put you miles away from the playoffs
yeah.
race. Let's take a look at the standings right now, the MLS standing. You see, CF Montreal is still in the hunt for a playoffs place with 26 points in 20 games, 1.3 points a game. Yes, they're not at 500, but they're still there to and could be qualified for the play-in. Now there's a small gap that was created with the seventh place, with 5 points behind the seventh place. Orlando, Atlanta with 32 points, Philadelphia and Columbus with 34. When those teams were really close at one point, and just behind, and you see all the other teams, breathing down the neck of CF Montreal, with DC United with the same amount of points, Charlotte with 24, New York City FC now with 24, even New York and Chicago, New York Red Bulls and Chicago with 23 points. Um, a lot of teams are saying, a lot of people on social media are saying that CF Montreal will not make the playoffs. Are you ready to say that right now, or is it too early, or Is it too close
It's,
to
it's
call
it's
it?
so early to tell. It's way
Yeah,
too early, especially because the gap between Montreal's 8th place and 13th place is 3 points, right?
yeah.
26 to 23, all the way down to Chicago. So it's way too early to tell. And yes, like they missed out on the ability to keep up with that middle pack of 7 to 5, where now there's a 5 point gap and they have some work to do. But there's still, more than a dozen games left. I don't think that counting anybody outside of Toronto and Miami, I don't think anybody, I don't think anybody's season is done, right? I think that even Toronto, Miami, right? Something stupid could happen. You never know. It is MLS after all. Stranger things have happened, but I think of the teams whose prospects are a bit more grounded in reality. I don't think 13 teams right now are in contention for the playoffs. I don't think anybody is out of line, especially Montreal, who will be getting significant players back from injury. Samuel Piet, who will in all likelihood be who's supposed to be on the bench against Atlanta, who wanted to be on the bench against New York, and maybe even getting a little bit of a cameo. But with the conditions, and the team wanted him to spend an extra week just recovering and training with the group, and with how wet the field was, it's not, especially for a groin and adductor injury, it's not an ideal condition to return in. So, but he's fully expecting to be at least on the bench against Atlanta, which means all
Yeah,
these
and
players
Mathieu
coming back.
Choinière, and Mathieu Choinière is
That's
not
just one. Yeah,
far
hopefully.
from a return. So
Exactly. If it's just a knock, like he said, it's just a little nothing. He said, then he should be back. A sports hernia for Lassi Lapalainen. That hopefully he'll be
that
back, and,
may
and
take
he'll be
long.
contributing. Yeah. Well, I mean, he hasn't played since. Can't remember the last game he played, but
I don't
that's the
remember
point
either.
exactly, right? It's one thing after another for him. But again, a sports hernia could be on his way back. So again, there's really only Romel Kyoto who's a long-term injury right now. So I don't think it's reasonable at all to say Montreal's season is
Yeah,
done and they're not going to make the playoffs or anything like that.
I completely agree. And yes, and you talk about the 13 teams, but I think there's the two other teams are not to be taken lightly either. With Toronto
No,
FC, we all know, the quality they have in their squad. So now Bob Bradley's not here, so they might be able to go on a run also because they have so much quality within that squad. And the second team is Inter Miami, and we all know,
who
with
will be getting
Lionel
reinforcements? Yes,
Messi and Sergio
Sergio
Busquets coming
Busquets
in, and there's talks
and
also
maybe
about
Sergio
other
Ramos. Yeah,
exactly about other players joining also Inter Miami, and that could be something very interesting for the end of the season. I want to talk to you about the schedule
mhm.
before the Leagues Cup because I think,
Yeah.
in my opinion, it's a turning point in the season of CF Montreal. And at the same time, we'll answer Roberto's, sentence saying we may make the playoffs, but it will be a short run. So first of all, the next three games for CF Montreal for me are going to be very, very important. With Montreal hosting Atlanta United next Saturday on the 8th, then going in Chicago on the 12th, and then hosting Charlotte FC on the 15th.
Yeah.
For me, these three games will be a very, very important turn for CF Montreal hopes of making the playoffs. Do you agree with me, or is it still too early for you?
I think, especially because two of those games were at home, I think if they could win at
Yeah,
least two of those games,
yeah,
it's going to
they're
put
being
a
in a very good position.
massive dent,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
massive dent
I
in
agree.
in in the likelihood that they're going to make the playoffs. So I think that obviously winning against Atlanta, winning against teams ahead of you is super important, but more importantly is winning against teams beneath you, teams like Charlotte, teams like Chicago. You have to beat those teams. This is not hoping to get out of here with a point. Even the game in Chicago, they have to go into Chicago and win because worst case scenario, you leave there like the worst case scenario for them should be leaving there with a point because at least it's no ground gained from Chicago. But absolutely, you cannot lose any of these three games because those are definite. If you don't end up making the playoffs, you will look back on this week. It's a week, right? Because it's a Saturday game, a Wednesday game, then a Saturday game again. You will look at that week and you'll be, that is why we didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah,
If they don't take maximum points or as close to maximum points as possible from that week.
I think they need at minimum 4 points. That's the
Of
minimum,
nine,
minimum, minimum of out of 9. That's
of
really the
nine, I
minimum. Yeah, four
that's
points is the
yeah, that's
minimum
fair. As a bare minimum, I
as a
agree with you.
bare minimum.
Maybe
Exactly.
5 points.
If you have
That's yeah.
less than 4 points, then you're completely out of contention, in my opinion.
That's then it's again. I wouldn't go so far as to put them out of contention because
I would
again they're
put them out
still
of contention.
like 10
I will put
games,
them out of
but
contention. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
if
yeah,
they,
yeah,
they they would have dug themselves a huge hole because
yeah.
it's not just the fact that you're losing these games, it's who you're losing to and the ground you're either
Exactly,
giving up or losing out on, right? Because
exactly,
if they win against Atlanta, first of all, it's a 4-point game and they bridge that gap to 3 points to Atlanta, which is in fifth place right now.
exactly.
So that's a
That's
huge step towards bridging that gap they created by losing to New York. They
but
can bridge that gap now.
yeah, and also I think it's important to keep those teams behind them and creating a even bigger gap
Mhm.
on
Yeah,
Chicago and on Charlotte, and that's why it's very important.
yeah.
By the way,
You
hi
need that
to
safety
Roger,
net.
who's sending a hello, and to Liam that says said hi at the beginning of the pod. Roberto, you said hi, but we talked to you already, so we don't need to say hi again. Now, before we move on to the next segment and with the Canadian national team, we have two questions that were sent. First of all, from Roberto. That's why we don't say hi. And oh, you know what? We'll talk about that later because he's asking about the Canadian national team. But Tate, what were your thoughts on how Vilsaint played? Will we see more of him? We talked a bit about Jules Anthony Vilsaint. Just give me your quick thoughts on that player, but also, do you think he has earned more minutes with the team?
I think with the absence of Romain Kyoto, Hernando Sada is with these four strikers with Sunusi Ibrahim, Mason Toy, Jonathan Vilsaint, Chinon Zofor. Hernando Sada is in this almost advantageous position to say I am perfectly within my right to sit or start any of you based on your performance. So that kind of brings up the level of competition within those amongst those four as their go-to strikers. So if he sees that, Sunusi has a bit of a quiet game, but Jonathan Vilsaint sticks out, then he goes, okay, well, I'm starting Vilsaint and maybe Sunusi comes off the bench. And if Sunusi off the bench isn't too impactful, then he's relegated to an unused sub and then give all four the chance to kind of to step up. So it's going to breed this competition because nobody is safe, right? Mason Toy and Sunusi Ibrahim had this really good run of form for a few weeks where they were kind of the guys that Losada turned to. But I think this performance against New York kind of showed that they're not infallible and they're not on Romel Kyoto's level with regards to if he's fit, he's in the team. And I think all four of them are in the situation now where Sada can just kind of go with the hot hand or whoever's in the best form. And so, yeah, I think definitely get ready to see a lot more of Jonathan Vilsaint if he keeps on putting in substitute performances like that. And I don't think a start is out of the question
Yeah.
before the League's Cup break.
Oh, interesting. A start. Oh, wow.
A start, yeah.
Wow. Love it. Listen, I like what I saw from Julien Anthony Vilsaint, but for me, he kept things simple. And I love that. I love that. I don't think he showed enough to get a start. And hear me out, okay?
Oh,
The
right
guy
now I
is
agree with you.
hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy is hungry. He's very hungry. He kept things simple because he's very he wanted to prove that he can bring something to the table. And he showed that he can bring something. I think that he needs a couple more appearances where he keeps things simple again. And he shows again that he could be something viable for a CF Montreal up front before getting a start. People are getting
Yeah.
hyped up about Gilles Anthony Vilsaint. He's still a very young player, we need a much bigger sample size in order to decide on if a player is good or not. I've seen and read so many people saying, "Oh, he's the next big thing. He's amazing. He's everything." Let's calm down a bit. He looks good. He
Yeah,
seems like a very good player, but it all depends on how he's going to develop. Is he going to be able to learn how a game is being played, how to react to certain styles of play? Is he going to be able to learn how to read his teammates? Is he going to be able to learn how to score goals and how to get back after a very bad performance? That's how you see, and that's how you're able to measure a player. As of right now, I like what I saw, but I like what I saw as a substitute in a game where not even one player was playing well. Because for me, all the CF Montreal players had a bad game during that game. All of
that's
them.
fair.
The
Except Siwa.
nobody, except Sewan, but yeah, you're right. You're right.
And
Nobody
Corbo,
had a
actually.
good
Honestly,
game.
and Corbo.
A decent game, but was it a good game?
He's besides Sirois and Chouanier, I think he's been the most consistent player
Yes,
on the
but not.
team the
I'm
entire
talking about New
season.
York City FC. I'm talking about New York City FC. He didn't play a very good game.
He didn't play bad either. He didn't play, but yeah, I understand
For
why. I
me,
understand.
everybody played bad. Nah,
That's fair. That's
I'm
you're not
sorry.
out of
Just
line. You're
Siwa.
not out of line. You're not out of line.
Just Siwa. He's the only one that had a good game. So it's easy to show positives when all your teammates are not having a good game. So I want to see more of Jonathan Vilsa. Not saying that I don't, but the hype around the player, I just don't understand. It's too early still for me. I want to see more. I want to see more, and I think it starts with Atlanta. Hopefully, we'll see a better version of Losada's team, because Losada has a lot to answer for after that game.
Mhm.
Also,
Yeah.
so
I think his
hopefully we'll see
performance
better.
on if they play well, I want to see his performance in a team that's playing well and how it compares to Mason Toy or to Sunusi Rahim or Chinam so far. I agree with you on that. And I think that if he can bring something different while the team is playing well instead of just like sticking out amidst a sea of okay
Yeah,
performances or bad performances, I think that'll do more for his stock than the 20 minutes he put in against New York. I think I agree with you on that. But if he could do that
I.
against Chicago and against Atlanta,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
that's
see a
awesome.
start. I don't see a start against
Yeah,
Charlotte as a ridiculous. I see it
yeah,
as a very real possibility, and even maybe God forbid in the League's Cup, depending on how seriously the teams are taking League's Cup, I could see it as a chance for him there to get some minutes.
yeah. And you know what? Looking at the way CF Montreal is playing, just to sum it up, I don't see. I don't. I wouldn't be very surprised if CF Montreal gets 7 points out of those 4 games, those three remaining games before the League's Cup. 2 games at home,
That's
getting
not
six
ridiculous.
points
It's not
there,
ridiculous.
and a point in Chicago. That's possible. Now, of course, CF Montreal will have to be the best version of themselves, and they've shown it multiple times this year. So, are they able to go back to that version? We'll see. Moving on with the program, we have the Canadian national
Ugh.
team, unfortunately, playing in the Gold Cup. That was a game, and I completely forgot which day it was, but it was the same day on Saturday. And you know what? I was
Saturday,
watching the
yeah.
two games at the same
I was
time on two
double
screens.
disappointed. Me too. Double
Yeah,
disappointment.
double disappointed. Really double disappointed. With Canada playing its second game of the Gold Cup after a very disappointing draw against Guadeloupe, and we talked about it last time around. Um, Canada was supposed to show and to display their dominance, because we knew that in the Gold Cup they were the clear favorite of that group, and they were playing against Guatemala. a team that's good, but not a force in CONCACAF. Yes, of course, they had a very good Aaron Herrera that declared for Guatemala. That was for me the best player of the squad in that game. And even if you look at the raw talent on that squad, it's clear that Aaron Herrera is the best player on
Yeah.
that team. And John Herdman had to prove his detractors wrong after the 2-2 draw, as I said, knowing that the French island destroyed Cuba a few minutes earlier, 4-1, and they did gain 3 valuable points before the game. So right now, just before the game, you had Guadeloupe with 4 points, Cuba with 0, Guatemala was 3 points, and Canada with only 1 point. So this is the starting 11 that chose John Herdman. So Milan Borjan in goal, Kamal Miller, Steven Vittoria, and Moise Bambito forming the back line, the three central defenders, with Richie Larea and Liam Miller playing as wingbacks. So Miller on the left and Richie Larea on the right. In the midfield, you had Liam Fraser with Adi Ahmed and Osorio playing in the midfield. And up front, you had Jerna Hoylett and Lucas Cavallini. When you saw that starting 11, what was your reaction, Elias?
I honestly thought they had made a mistake and posted the lineup from the Guadeloupe game. Because
No,
I
Fraser
saw that and I
wasn't.
was like, wait, that's this.
No,
I
Fraser
don't think he
wasn't the
started. I think he
starter.
went as a sub.
Oh,
I know,
yeah,
but
he
I
was.
just that's where my mind went. I'm like, there's no. It
There's
looks like
nothing.
they didn't learn anything from the
Nothing
Guadeloupe
happened.
game, and there was no change in idea or anything. There was no radical nothing. So I was like, this is the same team, right? I hadn't remembered the exact 11, but just reading, I was like, this is the Guadeloupe game, and that was kind of what we got from the team. It was going forward. It was uninspired, and the lineup kind of reflected that, and it reflected kind of sticking to your guns and hoping it works out, which was
And what I don't understand, man, and
basically
I'm sorry, like there's too many things wrong with this starting 11. Like, too many things. First of all, what's up with Liam Fraser? What's up with him? Like,
yep,
he's not good. I'm sorry, he's not. He's not. What's up with Jonathan Osorio?
not at the level.
Jonathan Osorio is not doing anything anymore. I'm sorry, with the Canadian national team, he doesn't deserve to be there. At one point, you called up Jaden Nelson, and you guys talked about the call-ups of John Herdman, and for me, that was a player that we needed to see. You have Jacob Schaffelberg that was here, that was able to show up front. You have David Wotherspoon that could have been a viable option, and of course, Ali Ahmed being here is maybe the only bright spot in that support in that starting 11, because he's been so good in the first game, and I think he was
Yeah,
the best player in the game also against
absolutely,
Guatemala. We'll talk about
absolutely. He's
it
so good.
later. And Junior Hoylett was pretty good. Lucas Cavallini is very subpar, in my opinion. You have a player like a Broguiard that could be here. You have Liam Fraser you have Liam Miller that could be a lot better as a winger. Like, what are you doing, John Herdman? Now we know that John Herdman is a kind of coach that likes to be very positive with his players, likes to give them
Yeah,
confidence, likes to tell them, you know what, it's okay, we had a bad game, but it's okay, we're going to do it again and we're going to be good. But at one point, you need to kick them in the butts. And he didn't do that. And for me, that was his opportunity to show that he's the boss, he's here to stay, and make some very important cuts within that team. And he didn't do that. And for me, that explains why John Herdman is not the guy to be at the helm of Canada soccer right now. We'll talk about the game after, but just looking at the starting 11,
yeah.
this was this was my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, last week even I likened, we talked about how John Herdman has guys, and John Herdman guys, we liken them to kind of made men in the mob where they are untouchable.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
second you become one of John Herdman's guys, you are free of accountability, except maybe Mark Anthony K. But everybody else, you are free of accountability, and you can you may not start, but you'll get your minutes and you'll be featured and you'll be called up no matter how many players are doing better than you
yeah,
that aren't getting the call, you are safe, right?
yeah.
And I understand that every national team coach has this, and every national team coach, given that they're not with their players every single day, day in, day out, every single week, you have to kind of develop these people you trust. But every single successful national team coach will drop a player, especially if it's a rotational player immediately if there's somebody that's in incredible form and that has been playing light years better.
And you're in tournament mode.
Yeah,
It's not like you're playing qualifying. You're in tournament mode. You need to grab points. Like you're not able to to win a game against a non-FIFA team. You're
you could
playing
see two
against this
goals against a non-FIFA team.
exactly, and then you're playing against maybe the team that's supposed to be the next best thing after Canada in that group, and you don't make any changes, or you made some very minor tweaks. That's for me unacceptable. Unacceptable. But let's talk about the game, Elias. Um, you know what? Canada was never
CanMNT.
able to dominate this game.
No,
Not even a minute during that game where Canada was the better team. For me, Guatemala was the best team in that game and deserved to win. It's as simple as that. They were
yeah,
not able to create any chances. Canada were not able to create any chances. Guatemala, on the other hand, had a few of them, with first of all Mendes Link pushing Borjan to make a save at the 20th minute. Canada only tried long range shots without any success. There was one clear cut chance for Canada during the entire game, and that was on the 29th minute after a long ball from I think Liam Fraser on the head of Lucas Cavallini. Lucas Cavallini cushioned his header very well to Junior Hoylett. Junior Hoylett tried to take the volley. Unfortunately, the header whistled past the crossbar. That was the only clear cut chance for Canada against Guatemala. How is that acceptable?
it's not. It's not. It's not. It doesn't matter what John Herdman says. It doesn't matter how his reaction is. He kind of admitted that it was unacceptable and that the fans
Did he?
were well, no, he didn't say that was acceptable, but he said the fans were justified in his media availability today. He said the fans were justified in being upset because it's not the
Today, but
standard they've set. Yeah,
after the
after the
game, he
game, after the
congratulated the
game,
players. He said they
exactly.
tried
So
and they tried. No, man, they didn't try. Be mad, man.
that's the problem. They didn't try. The problem is they didn't do anything of note. You are a team that even your B team or your B/C team is significantly better than Guatemala. With respect to Guatemala, who did have a very good game, and who, honestly, like you said, they had they had more chances and they had better
Yeah.
chances than Canada did, which is first of all, which is also very worrying given that the a lot of the B team aspects are in the midfield going forward. The defense is, aside from Alistair Johnston, is most likely what we're going to see at a full strength side. Maybe Sam Adeklubi is in there too, or Alfonso Davies, but a lot of the defenders
I
are defenders
agree.
that played at the World
Yeah.
Cup, right? They played at the World Cup. Richie Larea played at the World Cup. Milan Borjan, Steven Vittoria, Kamal Miller played at a World Cup, and they are putting in performances like these last two games, which is beyond me. So the fact that you're even remotely in this game, letting Guatemala be in this game, is first of all, it's an indictment of just how complacent Canada soccer's gone, but it's also an indictment of they are nowhere near as good as they think they are,
No,
especially
but
when they
but
lose their European talent. They're nowhere
I'm
near as good
sorry.
as they think they are.
I'm sorry, Elias. I agree with you with what they've shown, but I think that quality wise, Canada has more quality. than Guatemala, even without
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
those main players. I think that unfortunately, John Herdman is just using exploiting the very good players on that team to make a name for himself. But as of right now, he's not able to show that Canada has a better pool, national pool, than all those CONCACAF teams. And for me, this is unacceptable. I think
Yeah.
that a player like Jaden Nelson is better than the best Guatemalan. I think that
Yes,
players
absolutely.
like Mathieu Chouanière could have been really good in that midfield, even if he's injured. I know you talked about it last week. He was injured, but he. I'm sure he would have played 5 minutes like on one foot, and he would have been better than those midfielders that we saw during that game. And again, you have quality players in Canada. You have great players in the Canadian Premier League. But no, it's better to go and call a third division nobody in Europe than call a player from your own national league. And I cannot understand it. It's impossible. We have good players in Canada and we need to show it. Those great players that are missing the Gold Cup, of course, it's of course the quality that they bring is a lot better than all of the other players that in Canada, but we do have quality in that squad, and unfortunately John Herdman is not the right guy to show that quality in my opinion. Now we did have another um, another chance right after around the 75th minute. Around the 75th minute, we had Jacob Schaffelberg that had a good chance. And I think the best chance in the game, I think we lost Elias, so it'll only be me for a few minutes. So we had Jacob Schaffelberg get a very good chance at the 75th minute. He wasn't, unfortunately, able to control the ball correctly, and he was quickly closed down by Hagen. He was quickly closed down by Hagen. Jacob, I'm talking about the chance of Jacob Schaffelberg,
Yes.
Elias, around the
Sorry about
75th
that. My
minute.
Wi-Fi just
It's okay, it
connected. So,
happens.
so
It happens. I was able to manage. So yeah, so Schaffelberg getting that chance, not able to control it well, and then by the time he controlled the ball, of course the goalkeeper was able to close him down, and that was a missed opportunity. I saw a lot of people really destroying Jacob Schaffelberg, and I still can't understand it. For me, he had a decent game. Do
yeah,
you agree that
absolutely.
Schaffelberg had a decent game?
100%. And he needs to start against Cuba. He
Yeah,
needs to start against Cuba. I'd like to see him start against Cuba. I like to see Jaden Nelson start against Cuba because they bring energy and they bring pace and they
yeah,
bring this technical quality that has clearly just not been there in the front
yeah,
line. And I think I absolutely agree with you that Shuffleberg, again, I think he could have done better in moments like that. But overall, given how poorly Canada played, he's again the bar is very low, but he was definitely one of the brighter spots in that team, given how poorly everybody else played. And again, just his willingness to go forward and take people on, similar to kind of what we saw from Vilsaint in the Montreal game, was it's a refreshing kind of shot in
yeah.
the arm that the team needs. And having him as a starter is vital, or if you don't want the team to kind of get bogged down in complacency.
Yeah, and at one point you need to give him a chance. I'm sorry. Brim has had his chance, and a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
are saying, "Oh, he played well when he came in." No, sorry, man, he's not at the level. I'm
It was
sorry,
all
he's not.
right, but I mean, yeah,
He's not at the level. I think that Jaden Nelson could be that player that can bring that extra spark in the Canadian offense. So let's wait and see what will John Herdman do in the next game. But first of all, let's talk about the best chance of the game, and it was, of course, for Guatemala around the
yeah,
82nd minute. Um, the best chance of the game, the best chance was for Guatemala with the substitutes Garcia, who tried the sombrero flick. I don't know if you call it like that in English. In French, it's called coup de
yes,
sombrero. It's a sombrero flick.
yeah. It's a
Uh,
sombrero. Everyone calls
exactly. So he was able to lift it up the defender, and tried the volley. He had more than enough time to control the ball and just, change his foot and just curl the ball with his left foot, but he didn't do it. He tried the volley that was very, very hard with a very high difficulty, and unfortunately he missed the net. I say unfortunately, and I sometimes, when at first I was very mad, and then I was very happy and relieved that Canada was able to get a point. But after the fact, when maybe an hour later, I was like, I think that it would have been better for Canada that Guatemala scored. I think it would have been a better thing because we needed to show the world and to show Canada soccer that we don't have the right coach at the helm of that team.
Oh, I think a draw represents that more than enough.
You think? No, because you know what? They're going to win against Cuba. We're going to go through to the second round. We're going to lose against the U.S. And everybody's going to say, oh, you know what? It's okay. We lost against the U.S. It's not the end of the world.
Because if they win the group, they have a path to the semifinals. So no, it's not excusable.
In order to win the group, let's look at this at the standings. I have the standings right here.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to win the group right now, Canada needs to win by at least 4 goals.
Yes.
At least 3 or 4 goals, sorry. Yeah. They need to win by at least 4 goals, and Guadeloupe and Guatemala need to draw. So, hard. Either way, if Canada wins by 4 goals, by 3 goals, sorry, they're qualified as the second team at worst. So, they still have their destiny in their hands. So that's, I don't know. I don't want to say good because it's not good. They should have been first by now with 6 points.
Yes.
But I just don't want Canada to go through. I just don't want them to go through. I want them to lose against Cuba.
I think unless they win the Gold Cup, John Herdman will not be coming back.
Oh,
I believe.
Okay. You know what?
Because
I need you to record this, to send this on our Twitter. The snippet. I need that video.
I'm wrong, I will concede that I'm wrong. If they do not win the Gold Cup, if they win the Gold Cup, I think he'll be vindicated and he's going to stay until.
They're not going to win the Gold Cup. It's impossible for them to win the Gold Cup. Impossible.
It's also impossible for Guadeloupe to draw Canada, but look what happened. So, stranger things.
You really think they have a chance of winning the Gold Cup?
I think they have a better chance of winning the Gold Cup than Guadeloupe did of taking points away from Canada, and they did. So, at this point, I am throwing any kind of realism in this tournament out the window because Canada, who made the World Cup and who topped the octagon, even with their B team, currently has 2 points in a group with Guatemala, Guadeloupe, and Cuba. This is not real. So we are in a FIFA simulation. This is not real.
You're telling me there's 99.99% of chance that John Herdman would be sacked as a national team coach at the end of this tournament.
I think
that's what you're telling me.
Should be.
Yeah,
but I'm saying he will be.
Okay.
I'm saying he should be, right?
Okay.
Because we talked about this in the preview to the Gold Cup. If they don't take 9 points, it's how you don't take 9 points. If you draw Cuba, if you draw Guadeloupe, because they put in an incredible effort, but you win the other 2 games and you still top the group. Okay. It's a disappointment, but it's not catastrophic. This group stage, even if they top it, is catastrophic by in every sense of the word.
I agree.
Right? The only way this could go worse is if they get knocked out.
Yeah, so and that's what I said before the Gold Cup. I said that every time that John Herdman had to play a game where there were favorites, he won the game. Every time that he lost the games were against very good teams. And this tournament, it's the other way around. He's not winning the games that he should have won. He should win. He should win.
My problem is not that he's not winning. It's how he's not winning. Exactly. That makes me say that he shouldn't be the coach. If they were playing if it showed that John Herdman had learned and they were playing well, and Guadeloupe had a godly goalkeeper, and Guatemala played just really well defensively, even though Canada had 25 shots and should have scored 7 goals. That happens, right? That happens in
Yeah,
soccer. But the
yeah,
way that they're
yeah.
not winning these games, the way that they played in the Nations League final, this lack of evolution from John Herdman is why I think he shouldn't be with the group after this tournament. It's not the results, especially in the Gold Cup when you don't have all your best players. It's
Yeah.
the way that he's going about it. It's the way he's selecting his team. It's the way he's lining up his team. It's the way he's adapting and setting up the team tactically that are just nowhere near the level required if you want to even smell the knockout stage of the World Cup in 3 years.
Yeah, let's wait and see. I just, I'll be very surprised if Canada doesn't win against Cuba. I think it's going to be an easy win. Very easy win because,
we said that
well,
about the other 2 games.
no, but I think Cuba is something else. First of all, they don't have any more players because they all, deserted.
That too. Yeah,
So
that's a terrible
one.
situation, though. Yeah.
It is a terrible situation, and two, Guadeloupe is a good team, very well coached by one of the legends of the game, which is Angloma, by the way.
Yes.
So it's a team that's very well coached and was able to win 4-1 with players that are not that good. So I think the Cuba game is going to be easy. Now, I think that not winning that game by at least 3 or 4 goals is a very big disappointment for Canada. Winning 1-0 or 2-0 is not enough. It's just not.
Although 2-0 does guarantee them a spot, I think. So.
Yeah, 2-0?
No.
Is it 2-0? Let's look at the
no, only if Guadeloupe beat Guatemala, they need to win by 2.
Yeah, exactly. But like 2-0, if they win 2-0,
yeah.
Whatever, yeah, you're right. It guarantees them a spot because whoever wins between Guadeloupe and Guatemala, you'll be either in front of Guadeloupe or Guatemala, whoever loses the game. And if there's a draw, Canada will be in front of Guatemala because of a better goal difference. So at least you need a 2-0. I think that Canada will go through as the second seeded team. Roberto is very, very pessimistic, saying so 1-0 win. I doubt it very, very much, Roberto. I think that even with the grimmest of the pictures, I don't think that Canada. Yeah, I think that Canada will win at least by 2 goals. I just don't see it. I don't see Cuba doing anything more than just a 2-0 loss. So we'll see. Let's wait and see. Of course, they'll be playing against better opponents in the next round in a knockout stage, and I think that's where Canada's Gold Cup run will come to an end. But we'll see. Looking at that Gold Cup, so you said that they might have a chance to win it. You look at
if they top, especially if they top the group. I think they do. Yeah.
Oh wow, love it. But
because you avoid the US for the first game.
But you're playing against Jamaica.
Look,
and Jamaica has the best squad.
They have a very good squad because they have all their players. They have all their players. They have a very good squad.
They have their best squad.
I still think it's less of a headache to get past the US than it is to get past Jamaica.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting.
In terms, especially with the psychological advantage that the US has right now, I think that Canada would be better suited to play against Jamaica than it would be against the US.
All right, let's wait and see. So, who's with Elias? Who's with me? I think that next round we'll be losing 100%. So if we qualify
100%,
next round, 100%, they're losing 100%. It's impossible.
If they get to the next round.
If they get to the next round, exactly. Let's wait and see. Last topic before we move on to social media. Transfer window. is
Yes,
about
officially
to open and
about to
to
open.
officially open on the 5th of July, so in a couple of days. What does CF Montreal need the most?
In terms of
Players,
in
of
terms of
course.
positioning, or in terms of overall best addition to the team? Because in terms of positioning, they need a proper wing back. They need a proper left back. That's that positioning wise, the biggest hole on the team sheet right now, in my opinion, is the left back position. Larry Lester has done a very capable job. Juju Kwizera is a very interesting prospect, but neither of them are by trade left backs. They are wingers that have been converted because they have good crossing, they are quick, they're good runners, and they have a level of defensive intelligence that is higher than the average winger. Yes, Alexandre, it's a very nice picture. Our background for those listening, it's
Yeah,
of
the
16
background from
of our
Arash
section.
Pictures, by the way. Arash Pictures that always sends us some very nice pics. So thanks to you, Arash.
Now,
Yeah,
in
sorry.
terms of what would be the best addition to the group, I think a striker. A striker, but when I mean a striker, I mean Romel Kyoto's level or better. Because I genuinely think that with Romel Kyoto's injury history, he cannot be relied on for an entire season. Right? The saying is, he's going to be great for the 20 games at most that he's going to be available. And that's going to be, he's not going to reach 20. If you count Leagues Cup and Canadian Championship, he'll reach 20. But that's the case with Romel Kyoto every single season. So they need a striker that can be devastating, that can create chances on his own, that could finish when it's delivered to him, and that can link up well. I think
Okay,
that they have a lot of very good rotational strikers right now, but they don't have anyone that's ready to be the guy in MLS right now.
okay, okay. You answered like a politician, giving me two answers. I want one
Yes.
answer, Elias. Right now,
Right now,
you have a chance of signing one quality player, just one.
one.
What's the position and how many players need to go to make room for that player? Because we all know that the roster size right now where we need to have some players leave in order to acquire
Yeah.
new players. And
Yeah.
and of course, if you're gonna bring, like, let's say if you choose a striker, you have four other strikers that are there. So it's you need players to leave either on loan, either on a
Mhm.
transfer,
Yeah.
whatever. So who's leaving, uh trade, loan, and who's coming, like, not who's coming, but which position is being strengthened. If you have right now, if you are Vasily Kermanzidis and Olivier Renard together, what would you do?
Given that Miami is about to get an influx of designated players and Leo Capana is on the market, there's a reason that he's at the top of the list in terms of a striker, because he does tick the boxes that I laid out before. So if I'm going after a striker, on top of that is a designated player, and they have room for that. Leo Capana is the top. Again, if we're not talking about Eden Hazard and all this and
Yeah,
that and
yeah.
the other,
No,
right?
no, I
That
understand.
is, if it materializes, it materializes. If it doesn't, I wouldn't be surprised. But if it does,
Okay.
Leo Capana
Who's leaving?
is at the very least, talk about gone, completely gone. I could
Yeah,
see,
like, leaving, gone or loan or whatever. You need to create room for Leo Campana. And if you bring Leo Campana, you have four other strikers or five other strikers that
five
will not.
strikers. Yes,
You have five
I
other
could,
strikers. So what do you do with
I
them?
could, I could see Chinonzo for leaving, because
So
I
you would
think of
do
the
a swap with Inter Miami, sending them a four for Campana and let's say 2 million of GAM.
at least 2 million of Gam, I think, because I
Whatever. Yeah,
think
I
that
said 2
I
million,
think
three
that I
million.
think that Sunusi and Vilsain are too good of a project to send. Again, this is a perfect situation, right? Because they might ask for
I love
somebody
it. I love
like
it.
they might ask for someone like Toy, they might ask for someone like Sunusi and Gam, because they are a more interesting project. but I don't think that 04 is in the future of this club. At least not if they bring in someone like Campana. I think that he brings a very unique thing to the club, but I don't think that that's what they need right now. And I think his link up play is not good enough to play the way Anan Losada wants to play. Whereas the other four have shown that they're miles ahead. In terms of leaving the club, I think that Chinonzo 4 is that odd man out. The problem is I don't think that a trade with him and Gam makes happens. I
Yeah,
think that
because
it
no,
would
I
take
think it's
an
interesting.
insane amount of Gam
No, no, no.
because
I don't think so
no,
because they
I
want to
don't
get
because
rid of him. They need to get rid of
yes,
him
they
to
need to
free
get rid of him.
a
But
DP
I'm saying
spot.
if I'm
One sec.
Miami, go ahead.
One sec. They need to get rid of him because they need a DP spot, first of
Mhm.
all.
Yes.
Second of all, they know that he's not going to have a lot of minutes. And they need a striker in case, Leo Messi is injured or in case, for rotational purposes and everything. And Chinoso 4 has shown that he is a player that can fill in that role. So I think it makes a lot of sense. It gives them a lot of cap space. It gives them that DP spot. It gives them GAM money that they need in order to sign players like Sergio Ramos and Sergio Busquets because they're not going to be DPs. I don't think so. So I think it checks all the boxes. Now, is Montreal looking for Lea Campagna? And that's the question.
Depends on what they're again because we don't know what Olivier Renard's
No, it's
priorities
okay.
are.
It's
We
your
don't know
choice.
what.
You know what?
But
I
if
like it.
again if we're
I love
playing
it.
Football Manager, this
I love it.
is
I love it. But that's what I'm asking. That's the question. You're answering the question, and that's awesome. And that's not exactly what's going to happen. And if it happens, you're a god. But
I'm a wizard.
but
It makes up
you're a
for my
wizard.
take about them winning the Gold Cup.
It's okay, man. We all have some bold takes. Ask
Yeah,
anybody that knows me. I like bold takes. Now,
yeah.
I will answer that question differently.
Mm,
You know me with the play the youth movement, right?
yes, I do.
I want to keep the strikers that we have. And I
Okay.
know I'm going to receive a lot of tomatoes and people laughing at me and
Boo,
people not agreeing with
boo.
me and boos and stuff. I like the fact that we have young strikers. Yes, of
Mhm.
course, they're not a finished product. I don't think they're going to become great strikers in the end. I don't think so. But I think they can grow. And I think they have potential. 04 has potential. Sunusi Ibrahim has potential. 04 doesn't have potential to be sold in Europe for $15 million. Not at all. But he has potential to be a decent striker. I think he can be that striker that is in a very good team in MLS as a rotational player. He has that ability. I like what I've seen from Vincent. Hopefully, he can develop. I think that Kyoto still has uh, some some good things to show for this year and maybe an extra year if he gets an extension. We're not really sure if he is going to get an extension, but he can bring something to the table. And I think that Mason Toy is showing some quality sometimes when he's fit. So hopefully he can stay fit in order to develop even more. I think, and that's where I like your second option best. I think that the left
Mhm.
wing back position is where we need a player. I think that we can easily get rid of Lassi Lapalainen, keep an Ariel Lassiter as a rotational player, and bring that extra quality left wing back within MLS. And there's a few of them. I'm not going to name any names. Go get him. Go get that player because he's not going to
Kai
cost
Wagner.
as much as a striker. He's not going to cost. He's not going to be. It's very hard to find a left wing back, by the way. So, and in MLS we have quite a few good prospects, so you can go and get that player. And at the same time, I would like us to get rid of, first of all, Lassi Lapalainen. Second of all, of Miljevic. I just can't. I can't. I just can't do it with with Matko Miljevic. I don't think he has what it takes to be an MLS player. And if you get rid of Matko Miljevic, you can bring another number 10, a young, either a young prospect like Bryce Duke or a more experienced player that can bring his quality up front. I don't need that extra GP that's gonna be the game changer. I don't think Montreal is here. I don't think Montreal has the money to get that game changer, but I think we can have a quality 10 that could be a good rotational number 10 in the club. So getting those two players for me is important. But first of all, getting that left wing back. That's my answer, my
Well,
real answer. We need that left wing back.
the one player that sticks out, because again, people talk right and talk about left wing backs, and
Yeah,
the first
of
person
course.
that comes to mind when I hear left wing back that would fit well with the group is Sam Adekubi.
Oh, that would be awesome. That
That would
would
be
be
awesome,
awesome.
and definitely on the more affordable side. If you go looking in Europe for someone to bring in, the problem is he's in Turkey right now, and I don't think he would be willing to come to MLS because he's playing in Turkey, which is a significantly higher league. If he was playing, in in a second division, or if he was playing in maybe a smaller European league, that would be a consideration. But it would have to be a significant offer. One player that I kind of that I don't know why it's stuck in your head, and when you get the brainworm, and you're like, I have to think, is Robin Gosens, who plays for Milan,
Yeah.
who is
Wow.
still relatively young,
That's
who is
but like
affordable,
you
extremely
really think that
versatile.
he would come too much to MLS?
I think so.
No.
I think so. Robert
Really?
Cousins, I think he would come to MLS. There's
Wow.
I think that is a very, very, if you're looking for a DP that is, an impactful, that's not necessarily a match winner, but would be one of the best players in his position in the league, that
I
is also
agree. I
affordable.
agree. But I don't
I
think
think
he's coming to MLS. I think he's going to go to another club before even contemplating coming to MLS.
how old is
Uh,
Robin Cousins?
Chan is saying he just won the Turkish league. I'm pretty sure that he's. Are you talking about Robin
See.
Gusins? I'm not. I'm not really
No,
sure. He's.
he plays for no, he's talking about Adekubi. Adekubi didn't
Did
win
he
the Turkish
win? He
league.
didn't win the Turkish league. I don't know. Adekugbe is playing with Hatay Sport, so I don't think
Yeah,
he won the
I'd be
Turkish league.
surprised. But yeah, Robin Gosens is 28 years old. So if Montreal is looking to first of all fill a void, and second of all
Oh
do it in a
man,
big
that would be
way,
amazing.
I I don't know why, but it's one of those players that pops in your head and goes, this would be someone who would not only do well but would thrive in a situation
Oh,
like Montreal's, with the needs that Montreal has, with his skill set and his versatility, would be awesome.
that would be great. I think he would be great. He plays with Inter Milan right now,
Yeah,
Robin, but he was on loan. He's at Atalanta. He was on loan
yeah,
from.
but he signed.
From
He signed with Milan.
oh really? He signed recently. Okay, very interesting.
Well, he signed, but he was on
Um,
loan with Atalanta.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and he's right. Chan is saying he moved to Galatasaray, Samad Gutbe, and he's not wrong. But I
Oh,
think
he
he's back
did.
to Hatay Sport. No, I think it was a loan. No, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But I think both of these options are very viable and very interesting. I don't think viable. I think very interesting for the CF Montreal. So let's wait and see. But one thing is sure, Elias. Before we move on, um, Holy Gale is saying, Elias, why aren't you being paid to scout from Montreal? That would be
Well,
nice.
they
That
know
would be
they know where to find me. So
nice. Everybody knows Elias, so for sure, if they want to, send him a message or just grab him at the presser, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna say yes.
exactly.
Now, one thing is sure. I don't know if you agree with me, but I'm like 100% sure that CF Montreal is going to acquire players during that transfer window.
Oh, I'd be stunned if there was no action on their part.
It's the first time that I see that Olivier Renard. I read his body language. I
Yeah.
listen to his answers, and we know that last year he was very happy with the squad that he had, but this year I have a feeling that he's not, and he's looking for players. And maybe he already found players. So let's wait and see. But I'd be very surprised if we don't see any reinforcements for CF Montreal. Moving on with social media, but first of all, we need to answer, of course, Robbie's question that we forgot about the Canadian national
Yes.
team. With regards to the Canadian national team, is it just that the B team is not that good, or are there bigger problems causing the disappointing results at the Gold Cup? I answered biggest problem, John Herdman not being able to read and to understand what Canada needs to win. I think I explained it very well.
Nail on the head. Yeah.
Good.
Be it
Okay, so Robbie,
tactically,
I hope
be it
everything.
manpower. Yeah.
Manpower, not manpower, or even man management. I would say man management.
Well,
That's
I'm sure that
like
he's a great motivator. I'm sure that he could motivate the
motivate. I
guys to
mean,
run
man
through a brick
management
wall.
or
Selecting the right
maybe
people. Yeah.
selecting the right people for a tournament, but also to play in the games, like selecting his starting 11. That's what I mean by man management. And Chan saying Hazard clock is ticking. Hopefully, I'll be very happy if Eden Hazard signs at CF Montreal.
That would be
I'll be
wild.
very
Yeah.
happy. Yeah. So moving on with social media, my friends. So let's put
Yes.
that tweeting sound. Won't be too long. Let's start with the
Yes.
first tweet, my friend.
The Twitters were
Go
busy.
ahead.
Yes, this is from Eric Njiru, and this is thoughts on the proposed offside rule. So this is, I'm sure you've heard that there has been a new proposed offside rule. I'm not sure if it's confirmed. I know it's being tested in some leagues next year, but the crux of it is now your any body part that is if a forward's body is let me restart. If any part of a forward's body is in line with the second to last defender, then he is onside. So no longer my head is peeking past the defender, I'm offside. No longer my armpit is just past the defender, I'm offside. Now the entire body has to be clear of the last part of the defender for it to be offside. Hady, what do you think about this rule?
Wow. You know, it's very hard because there's two voices in my head right now.
Mm.
The first voice is the entertainer, the product, the content creator, the guy that likes animating, football discussions, soccer discussions, and having more goals in a game is always a good thing. So
Mm-hmm.
having that rule in place, I think, would increase the number of chances because it's going to be even harder for a defender to really close down a striker because it's kind of impossible to play the offside rule or to play or to just watch your marker like from the side of your eye because it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be harder.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot harder for defenders. So I like that because there'll be more goals. Now, the second voice in me is the purist, the one that has grown with soccer, that has been watching soccer for more than 30 years. And I don't like change. I like things how they are right now. And I have trouble accepting change. Like I had trouble accepting VAR, like I had trouble, accepting the fact that, the goalkeeper cannot grab a back pass because I'm that old. Uh, so I don't know what to, I just don't want the game to be completely changed because I like it the way it is. But at the same time, I think that the game can benefit from more goals because players are getting bigger. Technology is helping those players getting better and better. Defenses are getting tactically really, really good. Uh, so it's getting harder, that much harder to score goals. And at the end of the day, you need those goals. You don't need games to finish 8-2 or 10-4. That's not what you need. But you need less 0-0s. You need less 1-1s. You need
Mhm.
more 3-1s and 4-1s and 4-2 and 5-4. You need those kinds of scores in order to get to get modernized in a certain way. So I don't know. There's two voices in me. I cannot. I'll be okay with whatever the decision is.
There is one voice in my brain, and I hate this for
Yeah, I
for
know.
two main
You're
reasons.
a former defender. You're a former defender.
For for one, the first reason I hate this is because I think that they are fixing the wrong thing with the offside rule. I think that if they want to have if they want people to have a better view of offsides, it's not to change what is offside. It's to change how you go about determining it through VAR. We've been over this. I hate the lines. I don't want lines. The second there are lines, you introduce you take away this whole concept of VAR is only for clear and obvious errors, right? MLS does not use lines. MLS, if the player is clearly onside or clearly offside, it is corrected to be such. If not, you go with the linesman's judgment, or you go with whatever the linesman called. I'm fine with that.
But
If a
then you
player is
you put
offside by
that
an
much
arm,
pressure. You put that much pressure on the linesmen, and we've
yeah,
seen we've seen how many problems it created with linesmen and referees being targeted when they're taking the plane and when
that's
I
different though because I'm not saying VAR is completely shut off to offsides. I'm saying that if you take out the lines to measure, that is what's killing the offense, not where the player's foot is. Because another reason I don't like this is because
I just
now you're gonna
don't.
have forwards that are positioning themselves behind the defender, that all they have to do is have their heel past the ass cheek of a defender, and he's onside and he's gone. Right? It's going to become borderline impossible to defend, and it's going to become miserable because now they'll have an embarrassment of riches in terms of offensive chances, and you functionally destroy defending because now defenders have to completely change the way they defend. Not just like, oh, it's a small tweak. No, no, you have to completely change the way you defend one on one, the way
Yeah,
you defend the long
and
ball. And I
and it's
think
gonna
that this is
encourage it's gonna encourage parking the bus too.
yes, but that's the thing now because let's say that I am parking the bus and there is a bit of a gap behind me as a defender. All the player has to do is stay
Yeah,
behind
but like
me,
if
but
you're
they'll be
parking the bus,
onside.
you're very close to the goalkeeper, so you cannot a through ball is gonna be very hard to to
But if teams are
to go
parking the
through.
bus, then this offside rule doesn't change anything because it's already very close spaces and it's already stuff like that. Teams that park the bus are not worried about offside because they're literally parked in their own penalty area. They're
Yeah,
parked at
but
the
what
edge of
I'm
their own
saying
18.
is that it's going to encourage other teams to park the bus because at that point you're not going to be very worried about that rule if that rule is in place. So a lot of teams are going to say, you know what, the rule is too difficult. It's going to be very hard to defend. We're going to park the bus because that's the only way we can live with that rule, right? That's what I'm trying.
I
I'm
understand
trying
the
to say.
need to get more goals, and I appreciate the need. This is not how you go about it. Fundamentally changing the way every single it's not just like if you play this way you kind of have to adjust. No,
Yeah,
no, everybody is going to struggle with this,
but
and
everybody
I
said the
promise.
same thing before VAR, right?
But the difference is VAR is not changing the rules. VAR is there to be an assistant. VAR
Yeah.
is there to correct referees that have made mistakes. VAR has not The introduction of VAR has not changed any single law in terms of what is called a foul, what is not called a foul, what is offside, what is
Yeah.
not offside. If you wanna promote more attacking, or if you wanna galvanize offense to create more chances, you could do it different ways. This offside rule change is going to make soccer kind of like a goal fest, and at that point, just go to the park and play with no
I
offsides.
agree. I agree. Again, that's the purist in me that agrees with you.
I love Chan's
That's
comment about Divayo would have
Yeah,
probably
I love
broken
it. And I
the
was gonna
MLS
put it
scoring
that
record. Would have broken the MLS
how
scoring
many goals
record.
Levi would have scored with the IMFC with this new rule? A
Yeah, and
lot. And how
Dominic
many?
Oduro would have been the greatest player in MLS history.
No, 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 no,
Uh,
no. People in Zaggy would have scored maybe 80
oh
goal,
my
80
God,
goals a season,
he
man,
would
with
have been
that rule.
Ronaldo. He would have been Cristiano Ronaldo.
He would have he would have been a lot better than Ronaldo.
He would have
Like a
scored
lot
so
better.
many goals.
Like he would have
He would have
scored like
scored at
literally
least 60
between
goals a
60 and
season.
80 goals a
Yeah,
season.
it
Yeah,
would have been insane.
Exactly. So yeah, very interesting tweet. Thanks for choosing this. And again, I agree with you. I'm not. I was just trying to have the debate going, but
Entertain the
the
two
purist in
voices.
me is yeah. The purist in me is a lot stronger than the entertainer. So
I
I
love that.
agree with you 100%. So go ahead with the second tweet. So we have the next tweet from our
Yes,
friend.
this is from Gavino De Falco, and this is from, according to 538, which is a sports analytics and stats page. The chance of making the playoffs: Montreal has a 52% chance. Red Bulls have 44, NYCFC 43, Charlotte 31, Toronto 16, Chicago 15, and Miami, even with Messi and Busquets, at 4. Hadi, if you were to put a number on Montreal's chances, is that reasonable, or is it higher or lower for you?
No, it's lower.
It's lower.
It's lower. It's lower. I don't think 52% is a lot, in my opinion. I think that right now, CF Montreal chances of making the playoffs is around 40%. Um, I I think that when I look at the potential of CF Montreal, I think they reached their potential. They with the players that they have right now, Hernan Lozada is getting the best result that he can have from this team. I don't think they
Yeah, I
can
agree.
be
I agree.
better. They can't be better. And if I look at the opposition, a lot of teams that are behind CF Montreal haven't reached their potential. And that's what scares me a bit. I think that DC United haven't reached their potential. I think that, of course, Inter Miami, New York City FC, Toronto FC, all those teams haven't reached their potential, and even Chicago hasn't reached its potential, in my opinion. So, are they going to be able to reach their potential? Maybe not. That's why for me the chances are less than 52%. I would still put them at 40%. But I think that CF Montreal needs a bit more quality in order to reach that 50% mark. I think they need a quality player to be added to that squad in order to reach that 50% and even go higher. I think they're one to two players away of being that team that could be over 55 and 60% of reaching the playoffs. They're not very far because the foundation of that team is very interesting. The young players are very interesting. The young core is very interesting. You need those two quality players that are going to come and just change things around for CF Montreal.
The second part of that tweet said that, mission accomplished. If they just make the playoffs, is mission accomplished, because anything can happen in the
100%.
playoffs, right? Is there any chance that this team does anything in the playoffs for you, or is it really just, we're happy to be here and we lose in the first game and okay, bye, thank you, and mission accomplished? Or do you think that
What
there's
was the objective of CF Montreal and Olivier Renard at the beginning of the season? And for me, it's very clear. Let's make the playoffs, and that's it. For this year, this is a year where you changed the core of your team that was here last year. You changed things around. You have so many players that left. And right now is to build a new cycle. And this is the first year of the new cycle. The next year, I'm pretty sure that Camacho Wanyama will not be here anymore. Kyoto will not be here anymore. You'll need to replace them. But the core will become the Mathieu Chouanière, the Saint-Piet, this is going to be the core of the team. The Watermans, those players that came in at the end of the first cycle are going to be the core of the second cycle. And this year, reaching the playoffs is the only objective. Of course, if you can go far, that's great, but I don't think that's the objective of the CF Montreal club
Mhm.
right now. Next year will be the objective will be higher for sure. What do you think?
Right. No, I agree with you that the objective is that. And I said at the beginning of the season, right?
Yeah,
In this group, there is a playoff team within
yeah,
this
you said that.
this squad. And I
Yeah,
still
you said
firmly
that.
believe that. Now,
Yeah.
in terms of percentages, I have it at honestly, I do genuinely believe that it's a 50-50, right? I think that
Really?
it's
Wow.
I
Okay.
think they are as likely to not make the playoffs as they are to make it. It depends on a number of factors, namely their road form. But the fact that they have more home games than road games to close out the season is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
And honestly, they just have to stay the course. They
Yeah.
just have to keep the form of the last month. They just have to keep maintain that to make the playoffs. And
Yeah.
that is not outrageous. That's not unreasonable. I mean, we're not asking them to go in the last 12 games to go eight wins and three draws and a loss. We're asking them to keep the same pace, which is more wins than losses, and then a few draws sprinkled in throughout, which is not at all asking too much of them. So I think that the
Let's wait
playoffs
and see.
are a very strong possibility, and I will leave it at that.
Perfect. Next tweet
This
from
is from
CanMNT Universe.
serious question. Do you think Alfonso Davies or Jonathan David would miss any games if they played for Germany or Brazil or any of the big um, national teams, even friendlies? And this is something
No.
that is a good point because a lot of the European players are gone. But if this is, France, if this is Argentina, if this is Holland, if can players just say, I'm not doing this, especially if it's a tournament?
No, no, and that's for me completely normal. Those players, Jonathan David and Alfonso Davies, play in Europe. The
Mhm.
traveling to go at the end of the earth to play a CONCACAF game against Guadeloupe and is just not it's not worth it in a certain way. Now, I don't think that it's Davies and David choosing and making the decision. It's just John Herdman telling them, listen, do you want to play? Are you okay to play? Or do you prefer to rest? And he's giving them the decision in a certain way. I don't think it's them requesting to not play because someone like Alfonso Davies wants to play every minute of every game. And we all know
Mhm.
that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that have you ever seen Germany or France play against island teams in
Yeah, all the
friendlies?
time.
No, just in
They
your
could,
in Euros, in the
yeah,
qualifications of Euros. And
yeah,
when they play in the qualifications of Euros, those players don't play. It's always the B team or the C team that play. It's always
but
if
they're
you're
but they're
playing in
part of
San
the
Marino,
national team. Yeah,
Liechtenstein, or looks yeah, because it's close by. They're just a few kilometers away, from the competition. They're not going at the end. Like if they had to play a friendly against Australia, I'm pretty sure that the head coach would have said, you know what, Messi, do you want to go to Australia to play a friendly if it's Argentina, let's say? And if he says no, he's not going to bring him with him. So no, I don't think it's the right. I don't think Davies and David can be pointed out, in my opinion.
okay. Follow up. If the Copa America happens at the same time next year, are
Oh
you gonna
no,
ask them
they'll
to
be
come?
there, 100%.
So
They'll be
it's
there.
it's not so it's the level of play, not necessarily the distance. That's the main issue for you.
It's both of them. First of all, the level of play, and second of all, the distance. If the Gold Cup was played in Europe, they would have been there, 100%.
Even if it was
It's
against
not played in
Guadeloupe
Europe.
and
Yeah,
Guatemala and
it's in Europe. Yeah, for sure. It's both of them. It's the first of all, it's the Gold Cup, and second of all, it's the distance. It's both of them together that is the problem. Do you see Son, Heung-min Son? Do you think he goes to play, the friendlies against Lebanon? He did play, but he played the qualification against Lebanon, but a friendly against Lebanon or Laos or Vietnam, he's not gonna play there because they don't need him. They have good enough squad to play without him and win. And Canada should have a good enough squad to play the Gold
Should.
Cup and win against Guadeloupe and Guatemala. And the problem is not here. The problem is we don't have the right coach. As simple as that.
Now, if this is the Gold Cup before the World Cup, the one in 2025, are you going to mandate your players to come to do the tournament because the tournament experience is so important?
Of course.
If you were John Herdman or whoever the national team
Of
coach is
course.
at that point, are you
And even the
saying
players would
I
want
I
to
don't care
be
about your
there, and
vacation,
everybody.
you have to come?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But
Yeah.
look, Mexico doesn't have the best players. The U.S. don't
No.
have their best players. It's the same for every CONCACAF nations. First
So
of
it's
all,
also
if you
timing. It's also timing that's an issue.
the real question is, do we need to play a Gold Cup every 2 years? And the answer is no. We need to play a Gold Cup every 4 years. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
That's the real
Have it
question.
offsetting like every other continental tournament.
Every 4 years, like every continental competition. It's as simple as that. No, not the African Cup of Nations is also every 2 years.
It's true.
So did they change that? No, they didn't. They didn't change that. It's still
No,
every
it's
two
been
years.
that for a
So
while. Yeah.
yeah. So and that's also a problem. Moving on with the next tweet, my friend,
On to the
because we
next
don't have
tweet.
a lot of time. A lot of
This
time.
is from Dwayne Rollins. I watched Canada this morning. The US won the Gold Cup with a full rotation squad last time, so quit making excuses. 0-3 at the World Cup. Played off the pitch in the Nations League final, and Fonzie won that semifinal. Winless and on the brink of elimination in the Gold Cup.
I'll let you.
Everybody, the standard and Canada's reputation was so high when they topped the octagon, and when even though they lost to Belgium, everyone was giving Canada their flowers. How much of that do you think was in the moment and kind of a flash in the pan, and how much of it do you think has actual merit? Because the Gold Cup, half the team is not there, but the Nations League final was very real, and I understand that they didn't have as much time to prepare, but I don't think that's a viable reason. How much of the octagon and the game against Belgium was flash in the pan, and how much of it is actual real development and quality and something that is tangible?
At the end of the day, we played very well against Belgium. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say it. We played very, very well
Yeah.
against Belgium, and we should have won a point or even won the game. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we played very well. The
I agree.
problem is, everybody thought that Canada is the big team, and players even had it in their head, and even the manager said, let's go F Croatia. And because they they saw themselves a lot better than what they really were. And the reason why Canada played well against Belgium, it's because they weren't overconfident, because they played and they were very serious in the way they played. And since then, Canada has never been the same. After that loss against Belgium, Canada lost their way because they've been overconfident, because they think they're better than everybody else. And at one point, the players need to be the staff need to be humbled and put back in their position, saying you have a lot of work still left. And the reason why you were that good against Belgium is because you knew that, and because you pushed yourself, and because you played and you were the best version of yourself. And they
How
need to
much do you
find
think
that
the
again.
Nations League final? How much of a humbling do you think the Nations League final was, and do you think it's enough for them to kind of course correct a little bit?
It's not enough. Look at the Gold Cup. Look at what they're
That's
doing. And I
that's
said
that's
it's not.
different again
I'm
because it's
not.
not the
I'm not.
same
I'm
group.
not. I'm not talking about players only. I said staff also. It's players and staff. And I'm
Okay.
sorry, John Herdman again chose the same players as you guys said last week, you and Eve, saying that he has his own players and he doesn't want to leave them away. He's overconfident with the group of players that he chose. And at one point, you need to challenge the status quo. You need to challenge your own ideas in order to become better. And he's not doing that. So we can blame the players as much as we want, but we need to blame also the staff. And I'm not talking about also only John Herdman, but his whole staff, Mauro Biello, Phil Neville, everybody. They're all to blame because right now they're not challenging the status quo. It's as simple as that.
Very good. All right. On
Okay.
to the final tweet.
Yeah, it's from
Yes.
Jake Catanese.
So this is from yes. So the U.S. national team will play the runner-up from Group D on July 9th. Wild scenarios here: the winner of Guadalupe, Guatemala would top the group, and then the Canadian national team would need to win to vault into second. If Guadalupe and Guatemala tie and Canada wins, they put everyone on 5 points and it goes to goal differential. What is your most likely scenario for how tomorrow, yeah, it's on Tuesday, tomorrow will play out? And what do you think? We talked about how Canada needs to win, how you think Canada will win, but what do you think is your most likely outcome, and how do you think Group D will line up at the end when it's all said and done?
Listen, I think we have a very good chance at topping the group. I don't think that we'll see a winner between Guatemala and Guadeloupe. Uh, and if there's a winner, it's going to be Guadeloupe. I think Guadeloupe is better than Guatemala, and from what I've seen. Uh, but I think it's going to be a tie between those two. And I think that Canada will win that game against Cuba. We'll finish first. And again, we'll see an overconfident Canada that will get eliminated in the second round, in the first knockout round, because they'll play against Jamaica. And for me, Jamaica is too strong for Canada right now, as it is right now. This is
Interesting.
how I think things will go on. I might be wrong, but let's wait and see. What do you think?
That's very good. I agree with you that Guadalupe and Guatemala will tie. I don't think Canada will score enough to top the group. I think they will end up. I think they'll do enough to leapfrog Guatemala, but they will end up in second on 5 points.
Yeah,
That is my.
interesting.
That is my. I think they'll win by two. Maybe even if they win by three, it won't be enough to. If they win 3-0, for example, it won't be enough to jump over Guadalupe, who has 6 goals scored, and the second tiebreaker is goals scored. I don't see them, doing more than that. So I think it'll be. I agree with you that it'll be Guadalupe and then Canada, but I think it'll be a goal differential, and then at least Montreal can get Aaron Herrera back, and they have a right back with the group.
Interesting. At least that.
As long
At
as it's
least
not, as long as it's not Guatemala and Canada that make it into the next round, then Montreal will get a right back.
unless they sign Ambrose from Guadeloupe, I think he's a good striker that could be a good addition for CF Montreal if you want my
That's
opinion. But yeah, I think he could be very good, and he's not going to be a DP, and he played in the first division in Belgium, so I think he could be
that is
interesting. So we'll see. So that's it for social media. Thanks, Elias, for choosing those tweets.
Thank you.
And thanks to
It's always
everyone
fun.
who tweeted and for those debates. I think we had very, very interesting debates today
Mm-hmm.
on a lot of topics. We had a lot to talk about. I'm sorry we were a bit over the 2 hour mark. We tried to stay between an hour and a half and 2 hours, but too much to say today. Thanks for everybody for listening to us. It's always nice. If you like our content, guys, we do have a Patreon page, so feel free to go on our Patreon. Our content is always going to be free, but having Patreons helps us grow the project. We told you that in the next few weeks you're going to see change. We're going to see where that money is going. Hopefully next week you'll see something, or maybe the week after. And we're trying to improve. We're trying to be better and to propose a better content. Feel free to share, follow our different platforms, and of course, engage with us, ask us questions, whatever it is on social media during the live streaming. We're always answering questions from people that are engaging with us. Thanks a lot, and see you next week for another episode of The Ball is Round.